Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. Captain August Okpe is the commander of your flight to London Heathrow today. We are currently maintaining our assigned altitude of 35,000 feet, and that's 10,700 meters. And for the curious, the temperature at this altitude is minus 58 degrees centigrade. Clear skies and the warmth availed by 25 degrees centigrade will embrace us on arrival at London. However, we will continue to update you with all necessary information as we progress to our destination. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, your captain welcomes you and would wish you to relax and enjoy all the fun and entertainment laid out by the airline system. Thank you.
So today we're diving into the life and times of Captain August Okpe, the last surviving most senior pioneer pilot of the Nigerian Air Force. How are you?
Thank you very much. And how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
So I have a few questions.
Please go ahead.
Let's go ahead. Let's knock them out. We understand your birthday is around the corner, with Nigerians calling on you to return home and celebrate with them. Where is home for Captain August Okpe? Is it the United States or Nigeria?
Oh, well, fine. First of all, I must say that birthdays are for women and children, so I don't place a lot of premium on birthdays. In fact, most times my children remind me of my birthday. So I want to make big deal out of it. Fine, go ahead. They know better what they plan for me. And I will ask for where is home in Lagos, Texas, United States, somewhere in Cyprus. I spend a lot of time here too. When I come, I spend a lot of time, but I don't come often.
In 2009, you published a 602-page airway military history book titled The Last Flight. And in this book, you stated that your colleagues joined the Nigerian Air Force in 1962 when it was established. Since your retirement, have you been in contact with any of your colleagues?
Oh, yes. We've been communicating gradually every year or next year. One of us drops off until, say, 2.5 years ago, I made contact. I was even chatting with my colleague, Captain Tony Magbo. After that conversation, the next thing, about 2 or 3 weeks after that, I was told that he died. So my last contact with any of my colleagues was 2.5 years ago. So nobody else is alive now.
The last surviving pilot.
Yes, I'm the last surviving pilot. Okay. Senior pilot.
And that makes you the last surviving senior pilot of the Nigerian Air Force.
Yes, precisely, correct.
What motivated you to join the military?
Well, I've always enjoyed an environment that is kind of organized, uniformed, procedural, and also like aviation since I was a kid. And when I was in the primary school, I was in the Boy Scouts. It was very, very interesting. I was in that uniform. Then when I got into the secondary school, when I was at Government College Umuahia, which was called the Eton of Nigeria, because it was patterned after Eton public school in the UK. So we had what we call the cadet corps, and we had a evening regimental sergeant major from the army. The government sent him there to live there and give us military training. That is extracurricular activities. And a lot of us were in full army uniform and doing that thing. So it was no longer kid stuff like being in the Boy Scouts and all that. So, and of course, that had an impact on my school and the students. A lot of us ended up in the military. But I happened to be the only one in the Nigerian Air Force. So that was how I got into the Air Force. So for me, it was like getting three, have one, get 3, that type of thing, yes. Okay. So I ended in the Air Force, yes.
Were your parents supportive of you joining the Nigerian Air Force?
Oh, yes. My father particularly, because my father was almost like a warmonger. He liked the military, and he fought in the Second World War. So he was all for it. But my mother, the day I was going to the airport to depart for Canada, going to train as a pilot, my mother cried all the way from her home in Ikeja to the airport. And she was asked, how come you're crying and you're worrying about it? After all, your son is going for something important, a very beautiful profession. And when he comes back, he was going to be a big man. He says, no, he doesn't want me to be a pilot because she's told that Air Force pilots don't last long. They die easily because of combat planes and plane crashes and all that. That was that. If she were able to stop me, she would have, but then I probably wouldn't have agreed with her. So I went. Years after I came back from the training, and we had a very big reception in my home, in my town.
Really?
And the reception to welcome me from that trip, training as a pilot, and they saw me as somebody that I'm beating the white man at his own game because I'm now a pilot, that type of thing. During that celebration, my mother was surrounded by her fellow women. Then she was telling them the fact that I deceived her and got into her womb, and she didn't know that she was expecting. That time, of course, malaria has always been very endemic. So she thought she had malaria at that time. And then she was treating for malaria 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. The 5th week, she went to the doctor to find out what was wrong. She was examined, and the doctor said that, Madam, you are pregnant. She nearly crossed them out, but then she told them that she was menopaused about 2 years now, so it's not possible for her. Because even a woman in menopause will not necessarily bother with contraception or family planning. I'm sure you know that, right? Telling them that I had deceived her and she didn't know that she was pregnant. And privately, when the party dispersed, and then I asked my mother, I said, do you know it was very adventurous? It could have damaged the fetus. That is, it gets to be brain damage from that load of so-called malaria medicines you are bombarded with, or physically deformed. She told me that physically deformed, no, but mental brain damage, yes. I said, how come? She said, I'm brain damaged. I said, how do you figure that I'm brain? She said, because no person in his right senses will go and train to become a pilot. So she didn't want me to become a pilot. That was it.
Yes. Oh, well, she must have been very proud of you.
Yeah, and that means I was the last born, so I was spoiled, yes.
So, Captain Okpe, correct me if I'm wrong, you did your flight training at the prestigious Center Officer School, Royal Canadian Air Force, Centrella, Ontario, and the Royal Canadian Air Force Flight School, Penhold, Alberta, in Canada. To become a military instructor pilot, you trained at the School of Instructional Technique, Royal Canadian Air Force, Clinton, Ontario, the Royal Canadian Air Force Flight Instructor School, Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, Canada, the United States Air Force Flight Safety Center, Valdosta, Georgia, and the University of Southern California, College of Aerospace Science, in Los Angeles, California. Is my record correct?
It's correct, yes.
After a military tribunal dismissed you from the Nigeria Air Force in 1970 because you fought for the Biafra during the Nigerian and Biafra War that lasted from 1976 to 1970, you obtained your airline transportation certification at the Acme School of Aeronautics, Fort Worth, Texas. That made you the first Nigerian pilot to hold the military pilot license concurrently with the U.S. Civil Airline Transport Pilot License. You later added the license of Switzerland to your portfolio. While flying for Nigeria Airways, you were sent for training at the Fokker Aviation Flight School in Amsterdam, Holland, the Boeing Airplane Flight School in Seattle, Washington, USA, the Airbus Flight School in Toulouse, France, and the British Airways Flight School, Gatwick, UK. You also attended Cranford University in Bedfordshire, UK.
Yes.
So before the Nigeria-Biafra War, you attended high offices and professional excellence as instructor pilot and staff officer of operations, Nigerian Air Force Headquarters, Marina Lagos. You were also the first air accident investigator and chief of flight safety of Nigeria Air Force. How did you escape being killed as an Igbo officer following the 29th of July 1966 counter coup that toppled General ATU Agui Ironsi?
I was posted to Kaduna in northern Nigeria from Lagos. I was the staff officer operation. For some quirk of fate, I was posted temporarily to Kaduna to help out in flight training because I'm an instructor pilot. And that coincided with the time when all the problems started. The Igbo pogrom began. We were flown out of Kaduna to Jos. That time, at the air base in Kaduna. The commanding officer was Lieutenant Colonel Musa Usman, married to an Igbo woman. And so he was in difficulty, in a quandary. How was he going to explain to his father that he was there, Igbo officers were killed? And also they would kill him for even harboring us. So he came up with a very smart idea. He got colleague pilots to fly us to Jos. All the pilots volunteered to go. Pilots are not into killing each other. A pilot that you share the cockpit with, facing bad weather, facing engine problems and all sorts of things, the last thing he wants to do is to kill you. And pilots are not brought up to do that. Well, as military pilots, we are trained to destroy. We are managers of violence, but when it comes to fellow pilots, we don't do it. Then he got an airplane, and all the pilots wanted to fly. This is northern pilots. They wanted to go on the flight, but it takes only 2 pilots to fly, but all of them joined us, and we took off to Jos. But we told them initially to fly us to Enugu. They said no. They know it was humanitarian flight, mercy flight to take us there, but they wouldn't know how the Easterners will receive them. They will give them concession simply because they saved us to drop us at Enugu. But they may seize the airplane, but they won't kill them. They will ask them to go back and seize the airplane. They weren't going to kill them for bringing us to Enugu. So that was what informed Colonel Musa Usman to arrange for that airplane system. So they took us and dropped us in Jos. Jos was relatively quiet at that time. It was, the chief of Jos was very well disposed to Igbos. For some reason, we thought that perhaps he probably had the Igbo blood in his system. So Jos was quiet, wasn't violent. There were no upheavals, like if it was totally far removed from the violence that was going on in the rest of the country. So when we got there, we were lucky to make some contact with the railway workers. They knew what was happening. They said, well, join us, put on the rail workers' dress uniform. And we looked like rail workers' uniform. And we grown beards so as not to look military. None of us was clean shaven.
Oh, wow.
So as to look civilian-like.
Yeah.
So,
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So then we found a way, and they put us in the trains at a certain point, requiring crossing Makurdi, where they did this very, very thorough searching. Before the train station, they got us to come out and put us in the water tank of a decommissioned train that was being pulled. How many were we? Myself, Captain August Okpe. Then that time he was Captain Omero, later a Commodore. Then Omero on the Air Force, he's not a pilot as well, but the other 2 or 3 were there. Captain Ezilo, he was a pilot, he was there. And then Captain Elendu Keje, the 4 of us, those were the people they wanted to kill in the base because we were the most senior. So we entered the train, and then we got home free, and that was it. And it worked out for us.
Wow. You were head of operations of Biafran Airport Board. What was the overhead function of the board? To design and build airports. We were in a state of war, so it became necessary that contingency must be maintained. And then the structuring of the airports board, the chairman was Mr. Clement Onyemelekwe, an electrical engineer and an economist. And the head of state chose the right person and the right members, the rest of the members of the board. Dr. Alex Ekweme, the renowned architect who years later became the vice president of Nigeria. He was head of planning. And then you have Mr. Chris Efobi, also a renowned administrator. And then me as the head of operations of the Biafran Airports Board. So Uli Airport was codenamed Annabelle. Why Annabelle?
The name Annabelle was a befitting epithet that conjured up a beguiling woman of irresistible beauty. It became the metaphoric allure Uli Airport had for enemy pilots, hooked on the destroying her at all costs. Night after night, they hovered over her randomly, a lot of enemy airplanes, dropping bombs randomly to disrupt activities, the loading and offloading military hardware, and the relief flights from Caritas, World Council of Churches, and a lot of them. So they did everything to subdue her, but the beautiful one refused to yield.
As Biafran chief pilot and head of flight operations, you made a test flight into Annabelle Airport when it was completed. Why did you approve the facility as viable for joint user airport system?
Annabelle certified the high standards set for it by Biafran Airports Board, and so I gave it a pass mark. It was not the issue of giving it a pass mark or whatever, but the important thing is to ensure that navigation system, guidance system, and approach and landing system were properly in alignment. So that event proved me right, as it became the second busiest airport in the world after O'Hare International in Chicago. People didn't know this because Annabelle Airport really was the second busiest airport, and it virtually beat O'Hare.
Harold Wilson, the British Prime Minister, openly declared that Annabelle must be destroyed. Why was it difficult for Nigeria pilots to bomb Annabelle out of existence?
Annabelle Airport was a byword for deception. It thrived on efficiency and camouflage, making it extremely difficult to spot at night, because Annabelle Airport was all-night operation, all-weather night operation when it opened. In daytime, it was without activities. So are you going to bomb nothing, bomb a non-activity, non-event? No structure existed near the airport, and its control tower was underground, encased in steel and cement. The only thing you can see was a series of aerials and antennas.
Biafran pilots who operated from Annabelle Airport were called Darlings of Annabelle, or Biafran babies. The Swedish nobleman called Count Carl Gustaf von Rosen was one of them. What manner of man was he?
Count Carl Gustaf von Rosen was a great African hero who risked comfort and fortune, saving lives. He always showed up where any group was disenfranchised, the downtrodden. He was just an errant knight, galloping everywhere, trying to save not only the damsel in distress, but every other person else. In fact, he was at one time the commander of the Ethiopian Air Force. And when the problem started, he even he contacted His Imperial Majesty, Haile Selassie, to talk about Biafra. But of course, Haile Selassie was spellbound by African heads of state who were worried about their own problems, the internal problems, than to do anything against Nigeria, because they could be like them. Remember Haile Selassie at the League of Nations, when the Italians invaded him, and nobody invaded their country, invaded Ethiopia, and they didn't do much. He told the World Assembly, today it is us, tomorrow it might be you.
So you were in Enugu when the first plane hijack took place on the 27th of April in 1967, even before the declaration of Biafran Republic. Why did Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu resort to such extreme measure?
You can quote me, Ojukwu did not authorize the snatch, as military intelligence kept him in the dark. He was only informed when the operatives successfully hijacked the Nigeria West Plains and were en route to Enugu. The Nigerian government, under General Yakubu Gowon, isolated and embargoed the eastern region when the then Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu was governor. The hijack was a response to the economic and financial starvation and privation of Ojukwu's eastern region. The hijacked plane in question was also our commonwealth. It's a part of our patrimony, and it came in handy. And in that period, Ojukwu declared the Revenue Act and also the Parastatals Act, one to conserve revenue that would have been sent to the Federation account, so that the Eastern Nigeria will be a little more autonomous financially and not dependent on Lagos that was not even doing anything. And the other one, the Parastatals Edict, to have resources to pay staff of federal parastatals, the Nigerian Railway, the Nigerian Airways, the Coal Corporation, and most other federal parastatals in Enugu.
You survived the airway, but many of your colleagues were killed. What was responsible for the heavy casualty registered among the combat pilots in the Tactical Air Command you headed?
The Tactical Air Command consisted of two cadres of pilots. The first group comprised of former Nigerian Airways pilots trained in air warfare and military activities. The second group consisted of former Nigerian Airways pilots retrained and co-opted for military duties. The heavy casualty you talked about was prevalent among the later group. To that extent, those of us trained as military pilots fared a little better, but in all fairness, that war didn't respect anybody, military or civil.
Give us your typical day as a combat pilot during the war.
My typical day starts with a military courier bringing me a mission order in a sealed envelope direct from the commander-in-chief himself. Well, why this happened was because when von Rosen came with Swedish airplanes and all sorts of tactical systems, and we established that tactical air command, I was appointed commander. It was done specifically because he felt that there could be sabotage, because that was the fangs and claws of the Air Force, that's the tactical air command, to ensure separation of powers, and that what was done. So we're being controlled straight from the office of the head of state, and they give me mission order, and the driver brings it, and I bring it at home, and then I open it and read it. There inside this is the target of the mission order. Then I go to my drawer and bring out the charts and maps and start drawing lines. And then after I finish, either the driver waits for me or I use another driver. There was no problem with transportation, straight to the airport, and I take off. When I attack that target, before it's about 15, 20 minutes, BBC already announced that I just targeted, I bombed the place or whatever it is. How BBC got all that information so quickly? But it was not lost on my mother-in-law. Once that goon comes in with the mission order, I open it, then I go to the drawer and start drawing lines to a target. She told me only after the war that she could understand that it means that I'm going on a mission for which I may not come back. And then after I'd done it, the BBC will announce it, because everybody was listening to BBC. So he said when I start drawing the charts, line on the charts, she starts having diarrhea. That's anxiety syndrome. She only told me that after the war.
Throughout the war, you made trips to Gabon with Count Carl Gustav von Rosen. What was your mission in Gabon?
The Republic of Gabon hosts the offshore office of the Tactical Air Command I headed. It was just like having another office. That was all. That was where we went to assemble our military hardware, aircraft, and munitions, and also train pilots at the Libreville Airport or at Lambaréné.
How are the Biafran Air Force engineers able to keep your airplanes worthy?
We got our spare parts from Sweden, France, and Portugal, with which our engineers kept us flying. Funny enough, Sweden, that made the airplanes themselves, also made the Swedish Bofors anti-aircraft guns in the hands of Nigerian troops used in shooting our planes, our Swedish-made planes. So the Swedish guns being used by Nigeria, the enemy, was being used to shoot at us, flying Swedish airplanes. Very ironical.
You flew one of Biafran's last hostile flights in January 1970, just days at the end of the war. At what point did it dawn on you that it was all over?
I flew my last hostile flight in a two-plane formation. I piloted one plane while the other was operated by Captain Willie Murray Bruce. From the air, we saw long columns of enemy vehicles carrying munitions, and every conceivable weapon system everywhere. And I immediately concluded the war was over. There's no point. I told Willie over the radio, I didn't even disguise, I didn't send him any code, not to open fire, as the enemy did not even bother to shoot at us. What was the need or the point in firing when the enemy troops were far too many? Not when they completely ignored it. It was all totally, they even disregarded us. We returned to base, and that was my last hostile flight. And for the first time, we did not spend the rockets and all that on the airplane. We came back with the fully armed.
So where were you on the 15th of January 1970 when Biafra capitulated?
I was at home with my young wife and my children, waiting for the inevitable, because I already knew, and I knew more than everybody because I was in the A, and I had the best eye view.
You could have escaped Biafra with your family on the 15th of January in 1970 or earlier. What informed your decision to stay?
I had no reason flying out of Biafra. No, I was a professional pilot and not a political appointee. I never committed war crimes and was not afraid of a trial. I only fired at economic and military installations. I never shot at civilians, unlike the Egyptian pilots were doing. In fact, my briefing is to fire at, to achieve economic damage and just punitive measures to reduce Nigerians' resources with which they used to buy military hardware to damage Biafra. My operation instruction was to wear down the Nigerian resolve to prosecute the war, and I did that to the very best of my ability.
After the war, a military tribunal set up by Nigerian head of state, General Yakubu Gowon,
Yes.
dismissed you from the Nigerian Air Force. But some of your colleagues who were originally Nigerian Air Force officers were reabsorbed. Why was your case different?
I featured prominently in the prosecution of the war. The Nigerian military perhaps worried about me, I don't know why. I was a well-decorated manager of violence and the winner of Biafran Military Cross, Distinguished Flying Cross, and every other award Biafra could give. If I destroyed a lot of installations from the air, it simply means I was a good combat pilot. I mean, if I was quite devastating, that means I put my training to good use. Debo would say, all right, don't worry, I'm not going to go into that type of thing. I destroyed so much military targets with my airplane. Imagine the havoc I would have caused given the Nigerian more sophisticated weapons they were using. So I did what I'm supposed to do. I was a good pilot. I was a good manager of violence, and I carried on the way I was trained.
So what happened after your dismissal from the Nigerian Air Force?
I was a free man with family to support. My efforts to travel overseas for the singular purpose of converting to civil aviation operation and as a civil pilot were frustrated as I was denied permission to leave the country. I was told that I was a security risk. I couldn't understand it. And I was a security not to be let out of sight by the Nigerian intelligence. Well, eventually it was resolved. It was negotiated, and I was helped by even the very Department of Air Intelligence, to which the Supreme Military Council was appealing to make sure I didn't leave. They didn't see why they should continue holding me. So I finally left the country from UK. I did a program there, then went to the US to Acme School of Aeronautics and other civil institutions and sorted out my papers. When I returned to Nigeria, I began flying for the Nigeria Airways, where I gradually became a master of the system, and eventually, because of my seniority and experience, I was appointed the deputy chief pilot. My background as military pilot added to my rapid promotion. In Nigeria Airways, I flew the F-27, the F-28, and the Boeing airplane 737, the bigger airplanes, the Airbus A310, doing European routes and destinations, and the Douglas DC-1030, which could cross the Atlantic to, I was doing New York, Lagos, New York very frequently.
Do you have any regrets fighting in the war?
Nigerians, everybody that fought the war should regret it. No war is a good war for the aggressor as well as the victim. I regret fighting the war that I was forced to fight, and expect my compatriots, the Nigerians, the Biafrans, now back to the fold. Everybody should regret it.
So how did you feel when the president granted you presidential pardon in 2006?
I was indifferent. I wasn't jubilating. Nigeria fought us and removed me from the Nigerian Air Force. After the war, they said I was dismissed. So why should I, if they changed their mind and brought me, why should I react? It was a war between brothers, they said. So why was I dismissed if it was a war between brothers?
So you married Lady Patsy Okpe in July 1967 before the war.
Yes.
We want to know Captain August Okpe, the family man.
I just dropped General Ojukwu from a flight because I was his pilot. Oh, by the way, I didn't marry my wife during the war, so before the war started, just before the war started. So after dropping General Juku at the airport, and he went his way, and went to relax with Captain Andrew, because he was my flatmate. He was next flat to me. Captain Andrew Nwankwo, he was the late General Ironsis ADC. I was passing to go to my apartment. I was hearing noise in his room, some revelry and laughter. So I opened the door. There I saw Captain Nwankwo and two very beautiful girls sitting there, crossed their legs, and they looked surprised that I came in. Why were they surprised? I was in the full fly suit, military fly suit, in fact, Canadian Air Force fly suit, and my hat and all that. I think I looked very good, trim and in good shape and all that, radiating with the radiance of youth. When I saw that girl, I never took my eyes off her. And we eventually got married in July 1967. So I cannot go into details, a lot to say. So let me keep that so. Yes.
Your book titled The Last Flight is the only air war military aviation history book on the war written by a combat pilot. Do we look forward to another bestseller from Captain August Okpe?
Sure. My next book is titled After the Last Flight, to hit the bookstands mid-2027. It's a fine work that captures my experience as an airline captain. The last flight, the last flight was a military aviation history book. This one is my experience as an airline captain in the civil environment. It is a fine book and it captures a lot. Rather than bombs and rockets, this work brings you into contact with amazing passengers from all walks of life and their long stories. By the way, after I wrote The Last Flight, my children say, "Hey, Daddy, we hope that The Last Flight is not going to be your last book." And so I'm trying to make sure that it's not going to be my last book.
Oh,
Makes sense, right?
Yes. Well, we're excited to read this book and we can't wait.
Oh, yes. Well, I'll let you know. Of course, when it comes out, the whole world will know. By the way, The Last Flight is still available and can be provided by my office or my company. I noticed that Amazon is definitely not having any.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants the Last Flight, that one is available.
Any other last words you would like to leave us with?
Well, I can only say thank you for having me, and it has been an interesting interview, and I'm readily available. Well, I'm not playing hard to get, but I'm hard to get.
Thank you for spending time with us. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.